a key part of the review, obviously, is the things that are being reviewed. So, what type of stuff are we reviewing? Well, generally speaking, we want to review things that can't be checked out through any other mechanism. So, if I have code and I can execute the code, then I want to test that code. I want to do dynamic test cases to check stuff out. That's not to say that I don't review the source code itself, but I'm not necessarily really trying to look for code issues that would be found in execution. I want to find structural issues, things that are wrong with the design, wrong with the implementation, less than maintainable, things that might not be apparent and easy to find through test cases. So mostly I want to use reviews as a way to get high yield reviews of early on documents that I can't test through any other mechanism. And so largely I'm focusing on non-executable artifacts. Design documents, use cases, models, test cases, user manuals, anything that really is focused on going into the construction. Even to some degree, a user manual can be tested by reading through it and seeing if you can do the things that are said inside of there. That's kind of a form of review. So what we're talking about here is focusing on the things that we can do with a group of people. So executable artifacts can be reviewed, as I said before. It's just that we want to focus on the things that are more meta level. I can't test if something's maintainable. I can't test if something was designed well, or is easy to extend, or lives with coding convention and naming conventions and things like that. That's the type of things I want to focus on in a review. So as we're looking through the artifacts, we have to understand the scope of what's being reviewed. Not every review starts from scratch. And particularly if I have code that's or design or requirements that are existing, I don't want to open up the whole thing for editing. The thing about a review is it lives within the context of a project. If I'm in a project and the scope of my project is to correct some spelling on a web page, and that's all we have time for. If I open up a review and say, you know what, I don't like the way this is implemented, well, we don't have time to fix that. That's not part of what's being paid for and what's part of our scope. So we need to limit the scope of what's being reviewed to the things that are modified. If I'm reviewing requirements, I can't say, you know, I never did like that requirement, let's take it out. Because that's not part of the scope of what we have. We still have to live within the bounds of the project inside of review. So the purest form of review is I take a document that was approved and then move it to a new document that's approved. And so anything that's new added to the document, anything that's changed, anything that's removed, anything that's different should be up for scope of review. The idea then is that I always know okay, so I start with some nothing and I review something. And then every review that comes after, I always leave the document in an approved state. It gives me a feel that we've looked at the changes. We've looked at what's been desired, what's been expected within that. This part of the review is really important because it reduces conflict. It reduces stress. And again, it respects the scope of what's going on there. This can be a real big issue if you have subject matter experts or people outside that maybe have never even seen this document before. So it's important when you start a review, hopefully you have a facilitator that can help guide this, but you really explain the scope of the review. That you explain the things that are being changed, the things that are up for review, and ideally even mark them as such, using change bars or highlighting text or whatever to hopefully give people the guidance. It's not to say that if somebody finds an issue outside of it, you ignore it. It's just that you use your regular change management process to bring that up and address it as appropriate given the time schedule of the projects, the budgeting, everything else that could be coming up. The worst thing you want to do is make anybody who reviews something responsible for everything that you find wrong, because then again you're encouraging people to avoid reviews or maybe skirt through some of the issues instead of recognizing how anytime you look at a document you can find improvements and then embracing that as part of the regular process by giving the outlet of the change management process to go through and figure out the best place to do that. So now that we have a feel for the scope of the review, now we can look at the other parts of the review process a little bit more detail and understand at least some of the limitations we can live with as far as when we go to review a document.